Yo, what's up, y'all? Eli Berg, 2 times here, back with another banger video. Sports. The main goal of sports is going out there winning a championship. It ain't about all having fun. It's about winning a damn championship. So let's say you get a 1-year challenge and you get the top 5 quarterback in the league. You get the best running back in the league and one of the greatest end zone threats of all time on your team. And no, I'm not talking about the Killer Bees. That's for another video. But let me introduce you to probably the greatest teams to never win a championship. Phillip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates were in their prime. They were on the same team too, and they never won a Super Bowl. So let me take you back to when most of y'all were probably born, 2006. Imagine being born after 2005. But anyways, 2006 was Phillip Rivers' first year starting, and LaDainian Tomlinson had 1,800 yards. And this was a historic season. LaDainian Tomlinson broke the touchdown record with 28 touchdowns. And Phillip Rivers also had a solid year, considering it was his first year starting with 22 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And the best tight end that year was Antonio Gates. He had 924 yards for 9 touchdowns. So basically that year they had a decent game managing quarterback, the best player in the NFL, and the best tight end in the NFL, to go along with a 14-2 record and the #1 seed in the AFC. But guess what happens next? Okay, so the San Diego Chargers have to play in the divisional round the New England Patriots, and this is Tom Brady's New England Patriots. And Tom Brady almost choked this game away with 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Now remember, y'all, I said almost. If you know anything about the early 2000s San Diego Chargers, you know they were just great at choking playoff games. But Phillip Rivers had an even worse performance with 230 yards, 1 interception. He was sacked 3 times, a 55 passer rating, and gave up a fumble. But don't forget, they also have LaDainian Tomlinson, and LaDainian Tomlinson showed out. He had 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. But they still lost 21-23. So next year they were thinking, we went 14-2 and lost in the first round. We lost in the first round to a team we were supposed to beat. Does this remind you of anything, Steelers fans? So the next year they...
Again, not Jacksonville. Roethlisberger, ball, pop 3, rolling around, and it's scooped up. The speed of Telvin Smith. Goodbye. Touchdown, Jaguars.
So the next year they come out. They have a pretty good year, first in the AFC West, and they go 11-5 and go to the wild card. And for the big 3 stats, Phillip Rivers had 3,152 passing yards, 21 passing touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. Phillip Rivers took a little bit of a step back this year. And for the first team All-Pro again, LaDainian Tomlinson had 1,474 yards and 15 touchdowns, being named first team All-Pro and the best player still in the NFL. And Antonio Gates once again proved that he was the best tight end in the league with 984 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. Have y'all ever had one season where you just lose to a team you weren't supposed to, and the next year you just fucking ball out to all y'all football players? And then you just wonder, how in the world did I lose to that team? And they're just fucking trash! Like the Steelers, how in the world did they lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars that one year? And we thought Saxonville was going to be a thing. I'll stop taking shots at the Steelers. So in the wild card game, the Chargers win a playoff game. The Chargers have won a playoff game against the Tennessee Titans 17-6. And then the next week, they play the previous year's Super Bowl champions and one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And they play Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, and they play Edgar and James. And guess who fucking wins? I'm gonna keep it sweet with you. Phillip Rivers outguns Peyton Manning! Don't ask how. I have no idea how Phillip Rivers, yes, he's a great quarterback and probably top 20 quarterback ever, outgunned maybe the best quarterback of all time. And Peyton Manning had a good game too. He had 48 attempts, 402 yards, 3 touchdowns on 2 interceptions with a 97.7 passer rating. And Phillip Rivers had 19 attempts, 14 completions, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception, and had a 133.2 passer rating. So basically, Phillip Rivers was looking like he's the next fucking Tom Brady himself. But guess who he had to play next week? The man, the myth, the legend. Tom Brady in the 2007 season. Tom Brady in the 2007 season, this could have been the greatest quarterback season of all time. If not, it is. He had Randy Moss, who just broke the record for receiving touchdowns with 23, and Wes Welker. And this was the first season ever any quarterback in NFL history put up 50 passing touchdowns. So this year, Tom Brady broke the record for most passing touchdowns in a season, and Randy Moss broke the record for most receiving touchdowns in a season. While Tom Brady went on to become league MVP. And then for the other side, the San Diego Chargers, they have a great up-and-coming quarterback who just knocked off Peyton Manning in a playoff game, outgunned him. They got possibly the best player in the league with LaDainian Tomlinson and the best tight end. This is all down to go to the Super Bowl, might I add. Oh, and Phillip Rivers chokes. This man's Phillip Rivers on 37 attempts had 19 completions for 311 yards and 2 interceptions with a 46 passer rating. Honestly, for the Chargers, it was just an ugly game all around. No stats say anyone really played good, and the Patriots didn't even play that good this game. Tom Brady had 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, only for a 66 passer rating, which isn't even that good. Oh, and I forgot to mention,
the Patriots were undefeated up to this point.
So the Chargers basically have 2 more years until LaDainian Tomlinson's contract is up. And they know they want to keep Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates, and LT is the oldest out of all of them. They might have to get rid of LT. So in this season, Phillip Rivers has his best season maybe ever, throwing for 4,009 yards, 34 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, while being considered a top 5 quarterback that season. And this year was the true first time we saw regression from LT. He had 1,110 yards and 11 touchdowns, still considered a top 5 running back, but he was getting up there in age. And Antonio Gates also had a good season with 704 yards and 8 touchdowns. But with Antonio Gates, Vincent Jackson had 1,098 yards and 7 touchdowns. So they had 2 receiving threats this season. But they cruised to an 8-8 record, first in the AFC West. The AFC West was really trash back in the day. And then in the wild card, they played the 12-4 Indianapolis Colts. People were already thinking the Indianapolis Colts were going to win because they had Peyton Manning. And we know Peyton Manning does not want to lose to Phillip Rivers and the San Diego Chargers again. And they lose in overtime. That's right, the San Diego Chargers won against Peyton Manning 2 years in a row in the playoffs. And LT, Phillip Rivers, or Antonio Gates didn't play that well this game. Do you know who did carry him? This dude named Darren Sproles. Don't get me wrong, I know who Darren Sproles is. He went to Kansas State. He possibly is a Hall of Famer. He's a great all-purpose back. He's like, what, in all-purpose yards? But he shouldn't be carrying a team with LaDainian Tomlinson, Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates, and Vincent Jackson. Darren Sproles this game had 105 yards and 2 touchdowns out of the 3 they had. So basically, little ass Darren Sproles carried a whole team of superstars on his back. And next week they are playing the 12-4 Pittsburgh Steelers with their new quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. That the San Diego Chargers are just a joke team. They'll never win more than 1 playoff game. And they were exactly right, as they fall to the Pittsburgh Steelers 35-24. Phillip Rivers played pretty well. He had 35 attempts, 21 completions, 308 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Darren Sproles had a bad rushing day, but receiving, he played good. He barely averaged 1 yard per carry, but he had 91 receiving yards. So this brings us to next year. This is the last year of LT's contract, and they're probably going to give him up because they have a younger core. So the next year, they get the first seed in the AFC while going 13-3. And Phillip Rivers matches his last season with 4,254 yards, 28 touchdowns, and only 9 interceptions. And this is the first year in LT's career he did not hit 1,000 yards. He had 730 yards and 12 touchdowns. He had 12 touchdowns, so he had a pretty solid season. And Antonio Gates was the best tight end by far. He had his best season of maybe his career with 1,157 yards and 8 touchdowns. But Vincent Jackson, the wide receiver, matched out with 1,167 yards and 9 touchdowns. So they had 2 receiving threats, they had 2 running threats with Darren Sproles and LaDainian Tomlinson, and they had a top 10 quarterback in the league with Phillip Rivers.
All to lose in the first round.
So in the divisional round, the Chargers were looking like they're for real. They played the 10-6 New York Jets. And guess who their quarterback was? You know what? I'll just give you a hint right here.
The offensive coordinator, you got a busted play here, and then Sanchez gets hit. The ball is loose, and it's alive.
I have never seen this before in my life. Watch this. Vince Wilfork is going to throw Brandon Moore back into his quarterback. He's going to fumble the football. This is what Reggie White used to do to people.
Mark Sanchez put up one of the worst statistical games I've seen. He had 23 attempts, 12 completions, 100 passing yards in modern NFL, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a 60 passer rating. Now, to make a long story short, Phillip Rivers choked. Antonio Gates and Vincent Jackson had a good game, but no one rushed for over 40 yards. So in this 4-year run, they went 46-18 and only won 3 playoff games and never reached a Super Bowl. Charger fans, this probably sounds depressing, but at least your best player didn't get CTE, break up with the team, go to another team, and then say to fight the GM, and then get kicked off that team, plays with Tom Brady, and then text this person he supposedly had domestic issues with. Yeah,
Perfect. It's coming across the field. I saw it. I thought it was him.
Yeah, and I know that they both were in on the coverages at 55 or 37.
Personal foul, defense number 55. 15-yard penalty. Automatic first down.
Perfect in the end.
Definitely took the shot to the head. You could see it live. Marvin Lewis, before this drive started, was talking on the sidelines the whole time, it seemed like, to Vontaze Burfict.